I wanted to let you know that we're monitoring the severe weather that's going through Louisiana at this time. The president's aware of the situation and is going to be reaching out to local and state officials throughout the day. Also, yesterday evening, the president concurred with the FEMA administrator's recommendation to approve Governor Bryant's request to add public assistance to the previously issued major disaster declaration in Mississippi. Per the governor's request, public assistance will be added for 3 counties, Forest, Lamar, and Perry. Yesterday, the president had an amazing day at MacDill Air Force Base, where we met with leaders of both Southern Command, Special Operations Command and Central Command, and then had lunch with enlisted service members, thanking them for their service and hearing the ideas that were on their mind. The president announced his intent to make historic financial investment in the armed forces of the United States, showing the entire world that America has the back of all those who stand in defense of freedom. As he has said many times before, the armed forces are at the very center of our fight against radical Islamic terrorism, and we must protect those who protect us. The president kicked off today with a listening session of county sheriffs from around the country. The president welcomed leaders from the National Sheriff's Association to the White House and pledged to work closely with all members of law enforcement to keep the American people safe. He assured the sheriffs that the Trump administration will make every effort to stop drugs and crime from flowing into the country, put an end to the opioid epidemic, secure the borders, to keep terrorists out, and strengthen the bonds between state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies. The sheriff thanks the president for what they described as his, quote, unprecedented level of support for law enforcement and offered their full backing of his border security and immigration policies. They expressed how encouraged they've been by the pro-law enforcement atmosphere that has swept the country in the wake of the president's victory. They also presented a letter on behalf of the National Sheriff's Association thanking the president for his, quote, recent show of support for law enforcement, specifically on immigration and border security issues, end quote, and commending the president's 2 executive orders for taking, quote, significant steps to enhancing public safety. The group engaged in a wide-ranging discussion about the issues facing law enforcement, which the sheriff said was an opportunity they hadn't been given under the previous administration. The sheriffs closed the meeting by thanking the president for defending the rule of law, and the president took them in the Oval Office to honor them and to show his appreciation for their outstanding work they do to keep our community safe. A list of the attendees is available for those who are interested. After that meeting, the president held another listening session on how to best fix the VA. It's a top priority for the president and this administration to ensure that veterans get the care they need when and where they need it. Tragically, many of our veterans are being failed by a system that does not work. This administration will reform and modernize the VA under the leadership of Dr. Shulkin, creating a culture of accountability that puts our veterans first. The president welcomed the group to the Roosevelt Room and expressed his intention to take whatever steps are necessary to improve health care access and quality for our heroic veterans. Ms. Tiffany Smiley, the wife of a veteran who was blinded by an IED, detailed her family's difficulty and experience with the VA's healthcare system and offered suggestions to how it could be improved. The president, VA Secretary-designate Dr. Shulkin, and a group of healthcare experts and veterans advocates, including Ike and Laura Polmetter, engaged in a wide-ranging discussion on reforming the VA so that the needs of veterans come first. The experts discussed private sector solutions and innovations that could be used to improve the VA. The president praised the Secretary-designate for his commitment to veterans and thanked the group for their willingness to serve and do what was best for our veterans. The plan to meet on a regular basis to discuss their collective efforts to improve the VA and its healthcare system. Also this afternoon, the vice president had a big day on Capitol Hill where he cast a historic deciding vote for Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos. The president believes strongly that our nation's success depends on education of our students, and Betsy DeVos has devoted nearly 3 decades of her time and talent to promoting educational opportunity. As secretary, she will ensure that every student has access to a good school, whether it's public, private, parochial, charter, or any other kind. The fact that we had to get to the point where the vice president had to be pulled in to overcome the Democrats' historic and partisan logjam of the president's qualified nominee is another glaring reminder of the unprecedented obstruction that Senate Democrats have engaged in throughout this process. The American people sent a strong message when they elected President Trump in November. They're fed up with business as usual in Washington. Democrats in the Senate should expect that voters will remember how they stood in the way of the president enacting an agenda that put him into office. Last week, I noted the president had a fair amount of cabinet-level appointees awaiting a full vote by the Senate. We're looking forward to seeing more of the president's pick to lead agencies and departments confirmed in the upcoming week, despite these childish tactics of the Democrats in the Senate, who would rather keep the failed status quo than allowing to put the president's people in place. Also on the Hill today, Judge Gorsuch continues a full week of meetings with Republican and Democratic senators. Yesterday, he met with Senators Tester and Feinstein. Today, he will meet with Senators Sass, Schumer, Crapo, and Thune. The president is looking forward to a full hearing for the judge, followed by an up or down vote on this incredibly qualified nominee. At this moment, the president is meeting with Congressman Jason Chaffetz to discuss how to work together to enact his reform agenda. Later this afternoon, the president will meet with Secretary of State Tillerson. The president was obviously pleased to welcome and confirm swear-in Secretary Tillerson in the Oval Office last week, and he's pleased the secretary is now able to bring his unique skill set and deep insights to the important work of the State Department. Following his discussion with Secretary Tillerson, the president will have calls with Prime Minister Rajoy of Spain and President Erdogan of Turkey. We'll, of course, have readouts of both of those calls when they're completed. This evening, the president will host young officers from the United States Army Special Forces qualification course in the Oval Office. As the president said yesterday, members of our military and their families are our nation's heroes. It is one of his top priorities to ensure that the men and women of our armed forces have the tools, equipment, and resources they need to execute their missions successfully. The president is looking forward to conveying his gratitude and support to these young, brave captains. Later this evening, around 6 o'clock, the Ninth Circuit Court will hold oral arguments per its order from yesterday. I want to quickly run down what we can expect to happen tonight. A career attorney from the Department of Justice will present an argument in defense of the president's order. And to be clear, all that's at issue tonight is the hearing is an interim decision on whether the president's order is enforced or not until the case is heard on the actual merits of the order. It's a simple status quo versus anti-status quo decision. This is just like the case in Boston, which started as a temporary restraining order. There, once we were able to explain our position, the court lifted the order and held that the president's executive order could take effect. As I've stated before, 8 U.S. Code 1182 gives the president constitutional authority for this executive order. It says, quote, whenever the president finds that the entry of any aliens or of any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, he may by proclamation, and for such period as he shall deem necessary, suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions which he may deem appropriate. We look forward to a final decision on the merits of this soon. Looking ahead, I know a few have been asking about more details on Prime Minister Abe's visit later this week. As previously announced, he will visit the White House for meetings on the 10th of February. The president has also invited him down to Mar-a-Lago, and the two leaders will travel there for the weekend. This is a testament to the importance the United States places on the bilateral relationship and the strength of our alliance and the deep economic ties between the United States and Japan. Needless to say, the president's looking very much forward to welcoming the New England Patriots to the White House to celebrate their 5th World Championship. It was obviously a spectacular game. Lastly, we have our eyes on Kabul today following the tragic suicide bombing that killed at least 19 Afghan civilians and wounded 14. Just this morning, General Flynn spoke with the Afghan National Security Advisor to reaffirm our continued support for Afghanistan and for our strategic partnership. We condemn this cowardly attack in the strongest possible terms, and we commend the Afghan security forces for their rapid response. We also reaffirm our support to the Afghan government as they work to defend their people and against enemies of peace.